Alrighty, guys, welcome back to this week's episode of the Leo's Touch podcast. Today, we are going to be talking about hypnosis. And I'm really excited for this because this has sparked my interest for quite some time now through various books that I've read and also some other podcasts that I've listened to. And now I've finally met a wonderful woman who knows a lot about it and also has her own business with it called Modern Self. So without further ado, let me introduce Jen White.
Hi.
So Jen, as we kind of get into this, if you don't mind telling the people a little bit about Modern Self and what you're doing with that, just in like a vague sense, just giving a brief information.
So Modern Self it has become my vehicle basically to talk about complementary therapies that have just interested me over the years. Hypnosis being probably the primary one. But
there's a cat in the video, yes, and his name is Zim.
But yeah, so it's kind of just been this experiment for me that's turned into a little business, and I'm super excited to see where it goes. But
that's awesome.
Yeah,
that's awesome. Because Zim, please, this guy, you can like just push him off because I just don't want him like throwing that. Apologize about that. Cat difficulties. Zim is a new member to the family, to the Leo's Touch podcast, and he likes to jump around a lot. So Jen, please continue as to what Modern Self is to you and what it is for other people as well.
Yeah, so like I was saying, it's focused around hypnotherapy because that's what I've studied. But I've also touched on things that interest me, like energy work and just like other forms of like NLP for another example, which is something else I studied.
Okay.
Which is, I don't know if you're familiar with it.
I don't know what that is.
Neurolinguistics programming.
Okay.
So it often comes hand in hand with hypnosis, but it's often used in coaching and like talk therapies. So yeah, it was just kind of my place to explore these different tools and create a space that people can approach them. Like I wanted to make it really approachable.
Okay.
So yeah, putting my own spin on all of it really and just offering it to the world.
I love it. That's sweet. And if you guys don't know already what hypnosis is, it is in just layman's terms or basic terms.
Yeah, so I guess a lot of people compare it to meditation sometimes.
Right.
And I like to make that difference for them. But meditation, oftentimes you're practicing to sort of rid your mind of thoughts completely and get to that base level of just pure consciousness.
Interesting.
Whereas hypnosis, you're working with a desired outcome. So it's almost like meditation, but it's guided meditation and you're working towards a goal.
Okay.
So you're setting an intention and then you're offering suggestions to yourself that are going to hopefully bring forward that change or that end goal that you want.
I love that.
But it can also be used for like as a tool to visualize and to deepen your visualization practice.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's incredible. I'm excited to get into this topic because like
there's a lot. It's a lot to unpack.
Even for myself, like I was doing a little bit of research, like I was telling you before, and just with that, like I was like, there's a lot going on here, and there's a lot of benefit to it. So I'm really excited about that. So the big question that I always ask people at the start of the show is, what is the most meaningful thing to Jen today? What is the most meaningful thing? So what is the thing that matters the most to you, bar none?
The thing that matters the most to me, and I think the thing that will drive me my entire life, is just helping people and helping myself realize that I'm more powerful and that like my mind is so powerful and I have so much to offer and so much to enjoy if I just sort of claim that power and share that with others too. So I guess it was sparked through feeling helpless for a period of time.
Okay.
And I think we're going to get into that later,
Definitely.
But that was like a huge turning point is when I started to realize that I had more power than I thought I did and that I could actually help myself. Because when you go through that period of feeling so helpless, like it's hard to believe that you can.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess that would be like the most important thing for me. And that's always going to drive me.
So being more or less of service to others through what you've experienced.
And like tapping into your own power and knowing that you're capable.
I love that. That's awesome, because that is that, and I can relate to that in the sense of like early on when I started Leo's Touch, I was like, I want to do like coaching, like I wanted to fuse my personal training with, you know, just life experience and helping people, because I knew that, you know, I just had this like ability to cultivate and lead people in a way that, you know, resonated with them. I wasn't just thinking, you know, okay, what can I get out of this? How can I serve other people? And that came from personal training and coaching and everything like that. So I can really resonate with that. And that's why I think I'm so interested. And that's why I'm so excited for this episode, is just because of that. Because, and two, of how unknown hypnosis and hypnotherapy is at the moment. I mean, it is kind of growing in popularity, but so kind of getting into it a little bit more. When was the first time that you heard about hypnotherapy?
Okay, yeah, so that's actually a funny story. So the first time I heard about hypnotherapy was through my little brother, and he's always suffered, well, for as long as I can remember, he suffered with chronic pain.
Okay.
And he went through this whole process of being sort of misdiagnosed and diagnosed, and then it wasn't working, and whatever, all this horrible thing that people go through when they have this chronic pain. And at some point along the way, someone recommended him to a hypnotherapist. And he's also like a very difficult person. Like, he's almost like my way or the highway. Like, I was just so taken back when he shared this with me. He was like, okay, so I've been going to this hypnotherapist, and I think you need to hear this because it's really cool. And I literally don't feel any pain when I have it, when I'm listening to it.
Right.
And it helps me sleep, because he also had a lot of issues with sleep.
Okay.
And so I remember he sent me the tape and listening to it. And I was like, just immediately like interested in what it was doing and how this was working. And I definitely used it for sleep a lot. And then that kind of sent me into the rabbit hole. And at the same time, I was reading a book by Joe Dispenza, and I was probably like 19, and he was a hypnotherapist.
Okay.
So it kind of like these two events happened at the same time. And then I was just really fascinated by it. And so it started way back then, but I still was like studying something else and completely like distracted with that, and never thought that I would.
Were you in school at the time?
I was in school studying business and entertainment. So I wanted to work in the music industry.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And I was living in Australia, and yeah, I was just doing my thing, and this was way back. So yeah, but then sooner or later I just became more interested in it, and then I decided to study it. Yeah.
Wow, that's awesome. I love that. Always kind of figuring out where people's passions started from, and that's cool when, you know, at the time you had something completely different planned for yourself, but yet, you know, fate took its way, and that's really cool. So now, as I was looking into it, and as I've kind of been digging up throughout, you know, the last couple of years, even just you talked about how it taps into your subconscious mind, and how, you know, it kind of rewires a lot of things, or gives yourself that sense of power, right, of understanding of what's really going on in your body and in your mind too as well. So you mentioned to me, and we're going to kind of unpack this now, because I think it'll help, you know, everybody get an idea of how you now have grown more or less into it, and now are teaching it, and also it's your business now. How were you affected to the point where you sought after hypnotherapy? Like, what was it that brought you to the point? What were you affected with that made you revert to hypnotherapy? Yeah,
so I guess I, somewhere along the line, sort of developed this crippling anxiety and panic attacks and just the works. And I was still in school. It was towards the end of school.
Okay.
And I think a lot of people can relate to that during studies. Like, you're under a lot of pressure, and it's hard, it's expensive. Life can be just super challenging. But there was all kinds of things that led to that period of my life, and I felt really helpless, and just having pretty severe anxiety attacks, and just feeling like I had no options, because I remember like being diagnosed with anxiety from a doctor, and he was like, you know, you should go see this person and talk to this person. And I was like, well, I don't have money to do that. Like, how am I going to do that? So then came like a lot of insomnia and a lot of trouble with sleeping, and still in school. It was just awful. But I really started to turn to alternative sort of therapies. I was really interested in looking for something. I was looking outside myself for help. always. And hypnotherapy was one that was just super helpful. I used it for sleep all the time, and it changed the way that I had my like experience for that. But yeah, I guess that's how I got into it. And then from there, I just was so eager to study it, but at the time I couldn't get right into that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just used it. I had a favorite one on YouTube. It's Michael Seeley. I think that his recordings are amazing.
Okay.
So good. Highly recommend. And he's got like so much free stuff out
Little
there.
plug. All right.
Yeah, it's great. But yeah, so I just did that. And then I started to sort of experiment with writing my own. I've always enjoyed journaling. So I started to just like pick up the formula that he was using in some of his language and started to write my own little scripts and record those just for more specific things.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, that led me to my studies a couple years later.
That's incredible. So
Yeah.
would you use like your own for yourself? Like
Yeah.
really?
And that's like we can go into self-hypnosis,
Okay.
which technically all hypnosis is self-hypnosis because you're always allowing yourself to relax. And that's like the most important thing with hypnosis is that you relax. And
I guess with like hearing yourself, give yourself that
Exactly.
like permission more
at
or
first
less.
it's a bit weird because no one likes to listen to themselves talk, but then it can be really powerful. I remember one of the women I studied with, she said that none of the hypnosis was working on her when we were doing the in-class like practice.
Oh, okay.
But as soon as she recorded her own voice and listened back to it, she said she was just completely taken by it. So
That's
yeah,
powerful.
it was weird.
That's very interesting. And that's something, even for myself as a trainer, I'm always trying to like find different ways to help my clients, especially because my clients could be going through a divorce. My clients could be going through bankruptcy. My clients, like, it doesn't matter what. Somebody cut them off in traffic, but they're just as pissed off as somebody who's going through a 12-year divorce. And they allow these things to affect them so emotionally. And so for myself as a personal trainer, I'm always looking for ways to help my clients, especially from a psychological standpoint, to give them that sense of, like, power. And a lot of the time, this is an example that I find, and I'm not sure how much this would be able to relate to hypnosis, but it's a lot of my clients will be focusing on external things focusing in on them. So if like, you know, some guy's looking at one of my clients, she's like, this guy hasn't stopped staring at me, and she's so focused on him she forgets about her workout. And I said to her, well, does he pay your rent? Does he cook your food? Does he take care of your dogs? No, none of those things matter. Okay, well then let's keep going. Let's focus on our tunnel vision, and let's focus on ourselves so that we can ultimately reap the benefits of training.
Yeah.
And so I'm just interested. So if from a personal training perspective, I were to say, hey Jen, I have a client who's really having a hard time focusing, and she's also, you know, dealing with a lot of things at home, and then now she has a really bad sense of anxiety that's kind of taking over her life. What would be something for somebody dealing with that? How can they approach you, or how can they approach another hypnotherapist that may be in their area or something like that? What would be the route to take?
Yeah, I mean, just reaching out, obviously, and just saying what you wanted to work on. So if it is that anxiety aspect, there's always, like, absolutely you can have help with that. If it was something more specific, we will have a consultation at the beginning before hypnotherapy and just get to like the root of the problem, because sometimes it you know, manifests as one way, but it's actually something deeper or something else going on that's sort of just tunneling up into this behavior or reaction, I guess. But yeah, getting to the root of that problem, and then it's a collaborative approach, I will say, and figuring out, because every single client, like the way that I like to view it, and I think a lot of therapy views it, is that the client has all of the answers within them. So we're actually just working to pull those answers out, and through conversation and through just like collaboration. And then with the hypnosis part, it would be just allowing the client to relax enough that they could accept those compliments or accept those changes more easily, because you're bypassing the critical mind, and you're bypassing like the part of your mind that already has all these set judgments and opinions on what's happening in the situation or how it should go. And you're getting right to the control room, as we like to say.
Interesting. Okay.
And we're just giving a more positive approach to like a previous issue
Yes.
that you might have struggled with once. So if she struggled in the scenario at the gym, we could reframe it. So we would reframe it when she was in hypnosis and just create a different narrative, because our subconscious mind communicates a lot through metaphors and stories.
Right.
We all love to tell the story. And so when we reframe the stories, they become different experiences. And that's a really powerful part of hypnosis.
I think that's incredible, because for one, it's like there are so many things that hypnosis is applicable to. And I think, one of the, most common ones would be relationships with people and with, significant others or whatever. And understanding that, maybe in a certain relationship, you're coming out of it, it ended, and you're coming out of it thinking that you did nothing wrong, or, that, you tried your best in every way, shape, and form, but yet still there were things that were said, that were done, that are still you're holding on to and are affecting you. So I can only imagine that, like what you just said, kind of rewriting the script. But when you rewrite it, then is it bringing awareness to maybe some things that they did wrong in that situation? Or is it more or less trying to just understand the whole scene?
Yeah, I guess like it depends on each breakup. I guess there could be so many different stories
True.
there, but I do believe that like our conscious mind will recall a memory in its own way. And so that's why when you have something that's happened and 3 different people, they all experience that one thing in a different way. Like if there was a traumatic incident or something, and everyone takes what they want and puts it through or takes away from the scenario, whatever, and puts through their conscious mind. And then that is their story and their memory. But yeah, you can, I guess, you're kind of reframing the memory so that you have more awareness. I guess that would be the right way to say it, is a more awareness of what happened, but also just more, I don't want to say power over it, but like, awareness is the best word, I guess.
And that I think is really interesting, just from, because hypnosis is a lot in like self-development and a lot of, wellness and everything like that. So I think it really gives people a unique opportunity to look within themselves and like you said, take out a lot of the crap and take out some of the things that have been sticking with them and bothering them and letting them know how much power they have. And I think that's really incredible. So with that being said, we are going to take a little bit of a break here. We'll be right back as we carry on with our next topic. Hey guys, I hope you're enjoying this episode as much as we enjoyed making it. I wanted to take this time to share some information with you guys about Leo Fit. I'm launching Leo Fit with 1 out of 4 main services of our brand, and that is Leo Fitness Coaching. What that includes for those of you interested in the Winnipeg area is one-on-one in-person training. Secondly is our fully customizable workout plans for those of you anywhere in the world, with weekly check-ins on your progress and live coaching tips to help you achieve a higher fitness level. Again, I want to thank you guys so much for listening to today's episode, and for anyone interested in Leo Fit, you can email us at inquiriesleofit@gmail.com. Again, that is inquiriesleofit@gmail.com. Thank you guys so much for listening again, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the episode. Alrighty guys, we are back, and again, we are talking about hypnosis today with Jen White. So, Jen, this is something that I found really interesting, is like, I was telling a fair amount of people like that I was having you on the show, and I was like, she's a hypnotherapist and all these things, and then people's first responses are actually really funny. Like they're like, she gonna hypnotize you on the show? I'm like, what? I'm like, but and I was telling my roommate Stefan, he's like, is she gonna have one of those little dangly things, and is that gonna be how she does it? And so just these multitude of different opinions that sometimes are kind of accurate, and then because I even asked Andrew, and Andrew's like, yeah dude, I don't know, I think it has something to do with the subconscious, and he like spot on gets it, and I'm like, yeah, that is what it is. And so how do you deal with people, or how do you work with people, let's say, who have the very wrong idea of hypnotherapy and ask you like, what is it?
Well, yeah, there's definitely a lot of funny sort of responses when I bring it up.
Mhm.
I guess like the most recent like thing in pop culture was in that movie, that horror movie where the woman hypnotizes the guy and he,
Oh, okay.
yeah. Anyway,
I don't
people
watch horror
often
movies.
bring
I'm
up
just a baby.
Get Out. It's called Get Out.
Oh,
And the
okay.
woman in
Okay.
that hypnotizes the guy, and I think a couple people brought that up with me, and I was like, no, it's not like that. I mean, I guess some people could do that. I'm not sure, but for
Use
me,
the power.
hypnotherapy is in hypnosis is just a language tool.
Okay.
So we're like trance is a naturally occurring state. We all go in and out of it throughout the day. Like when you're driving on the highway and you just kind of zone out, you're in trance. You know, you're driving, but you're not really paying attention to the
Half the
fact
time
that
I
you're
don't
driving.
even know how I get where I
Yeah,
get. I'm
exactly. That's trance. And like reading a book as well. Like you've read a page and you go like, I have no idea what I just read.
Yeah.
So it's a really naturally occurring state. It's just a suggestible state. So where our brain is more open to information. It's kind of like the ultimate learning state too. Because
Interesting.
our brain waves are going from higher levels down through alpha and then into the lower levels where we can
Okay.
really, the best way to absorb. But yeah, people think it's really funny. They think that I'm gonna whip out like a clock or a little
Yeah.
watch, and I don't know, yeah. But the people that do come the people have wanted to come to me for work, they have already familiarized themselves with like what hypnotherapy is
Okay.
most suitable for, and it has a long history, like we were talking about before. It has a long history of being helpful for like a very wide range of things.
Oh, okay.
So, but I guess it has created, or it's had a little bit of a bad rep just because of like the stage hypnotherapy or hypnosis and street hypnosis, which is like pranks on the street people you can find. Yeah, like we actually did like a little afternoon learning how to do street hypnosis in my course, and it was really funny, but I would never do anything like that. She taught us just as like a joke. She was like, "Okay, this is what you're gonna hear like people talk about. They're gonna be like, can you do like stage hypnosis where you get someone up and you get them to do like a wacky thing on stage?" Are you familiar with stage hypnosis?
I saw it at the tattoo show.
Okay.
And I was like,
okay. What did you see at the tattoo stuff?
I don't know. They made like a whole bunch of people go unconscious for some reason.
Really?
Yeah, it was super weird. Everybody just like goes limp in their chair, and I was like, yeah. I was actually with well, I guess I won't say that, but like I was with people that we know, and in that sense, it was just really bizarre. But one thing that I kind of want to ask you, as you were mentioning, kind of going through levels and going through alpha states of learning. I believe that's a term, right? Is it?
So, alpha brainwaves.
I have trouble with reading, and I've always had trouble. Like I read my first book at 18 years old. Wow. Because I always just like struggled with going in and out of focus and like just being completely distracted, and also maybe football didn't really help a lot of that. But then I started researching how I could read and retain a lot of the context of that book, and how I could read faster or just be focused and be there and be present while I was reading, and not being like, what's on my phone? What's my dad watching? All these things that would distract me. So I started listening to gamma binaural beats.
Cool.
Is that would that be considered like a hypnosis thing? Because it works.
Yeah, I don't know a lot about this, but I do believe that sound has huge effects on our brain waves, and I do believe that you could probably enter a hypnotic state through listening to sound alone, and then also you train yourself to hear that sound, and if you're familiar with how you physiologically respond to it, then you're just going to go into that state,
and that's exactly
right
what
away.
happens.
So
I've been doing it for 3 years.
You're really training your brain to respond to a sound.
And now kind of one of the questions leading off of that then would be like, because I found myself even being able to not use it and still like have the ability to be just as focused and to retain just as much from the book, even when I'm not using it, at like 3 years into using it, or was like 2 years into it, that I didn't have to like put on headphones anymore, and I could just read wherever, because I get so easily distracted by noise and all those things, like if I'm like reading on the bus or something like that. But so is there a point where you use these tools to a sense where you don't then rely on them later on in the future? Like, is that the whole goal, or is it like a constant thing that you should be practicing and using?
Well, I think what you're saying is really interesting, and I do think that that's 100% possible, that you've trained your brain to sort of, now that like almost when you open a book, you're going into that state where you're going to focus on the book because you've worked with the sound, you've found this way, you've made this route into reading and absorbing.
Yes.
And so it's become a part of you, a part of your nature.
Okay.
But for hypnosis, what did you just ask? It was
like, could you, like, so if you were struggling with something, let's say, unrelated,
would you continue? Yeah.
Would you? Yeah.
We always recommend, like, if I were to supply a recording for someone, I think, and they were working on a specific goal, it would be like, we always recommend like 21 days, giving it 21 days to really sort of reprogram a new behavior.
And why is it 21 days?
3 weeks seems to be like a really good time for just creating a new habit or a new sort of, I mean, it depends on the person. Like, oftentimes when you do like once a week sessions, people will come for 6 weeks because normally that's a really good turning point for a lot of people. But it totally depends on the person and what they're dealing with. I think people can have rapid change too. Like, that's one of my favorite suggestions to give, is that like change can happen fast and it can be easy.
Yeah.
Because we create the story that it's, you know, it's going to be difficult. It's going to be so hard to have this new behavior or response or whatever it is. And it doesn't have to be. You can just, you know, pivot. You really can.
I love it. I love it. So then kind of like building off of that, I think it's really interesting, like everything that you've mentioned, just with that and how and being able to grow and adapt with it and now pivot, like you said. So kind of getting a little bit more into who hypnotherapy is for. Right. And people commonly ask this, like with personal training, or who needs a personal trainer? Everybody. Right.
Everybody.
Like that's the obvious, because I have a personal trainer and I'm a personal trainer. Right. And so it's just like kind of being able to understand the value of that service. So to that point, who in turn would benefit from hypnotherapy? And what are more commonly professions or people that use hypnotherapy, do you find?
I think that everyone, like training, everyone would benefit from a little hypnosis or self-hypnosis, and learning that tool and just having it in your toolbox, because it's so helpful. And I guess people most commonly like seek out hypnosis for anxiety. I would say that's like the most common. But little things like habits that you don't want, like biting of the nails, or just like all kinds of things, like things that you can't really quit, and you don't know why. Smoking is a really big one.
Interesting. In
the past, people, like, it's a huge part of what hypnotherapy and that industry has been, is like quit smoking with hypnosis. Not really what I'm 100% interested in working on, but of course, if someone needs help with that. But yeah, I think everyone can benefit from just, you know, using their subconscious mind to support their growth. Like, at the end of the day, you're just this evolving human being, and what more can you can always use another tool. Exactly.
Yeah. So something you said there, was interesting, to the point of, you know, like just sharing that everybody can benefit from it. So now, from your business perspective, and for you personally, who are you looking to help, to seek? Because I know for myself, like just as a personal trainer, I have the privilege and the opportunity to choose who I work with. Not that should, you know, you should want to help everybody, obviously, but sometimes there's the people that you just don't, you know, meld with. So for that, who are you wanting to work with, and who are you wanting to attract to your business?
That's a really good question. I haven't probably spent enough time thinking about that as I should. I'm really open to just sort of helping anyone that's interested in it. I want to create a bit of a community around people that are like open-minded and want to learn more. But I've always said, like in the past, I've always thought, when I was going through my studies and stuff, I really wanted to work with people that were trying to push past sort of like a plateau. So athletes was one of the first kind of groups of people that came to mind, because I thought, well, you know, they're already peak performance, but what can they do to step it up even
Yeah.
further? I find that really interesting.
That is, yeah.
And I don't have a background in psychology, so I've never really focused in on mental health issues specifically. I think that there's probably people out there that are better equipped to deal with that.
Okay.
But working with athletes or performers of any kind, I'm really interested in that.
I like that. That's different. Like that's unique, and it's kind of the one thing I really like about it is like you're signifying your niche, and it's high performing people who commonly come to a point of plateau.
Yeah, but also I guess like entrepreneurs, anyone who's kind of got a limiting belief that they just can't seem to shake.
Right.
That's who I'm kind of interested
like I've
in
reached
working
my
with.
potential. What more can I do?
Yeah.
And, oh wait.
And why isn't this thing working for me? Because everything else is going great, but this is holding me back.
Yeah.
It's like, well, let's figure out why that's holding you back.
Interesting. I like that. That's really cool. So now, kind of moving on, you travel a lot.
I guess
You've lived in in many different places. What are your how many places have you lived in?
Countries, just 3.
Okay. And then within the country, you've just moved around.
Yeah, moved around a lot. I've done some more traveling, but mostly I was in Australia for 6 years, which was like a huge part of my life.
Okay.
And then I packed up and left there at 24, which is in 2017. And then I was home here in Winnipeg for a couple months, and then I moved the other way to England, and I was in London for 2 years.
Wow.
So
that's where you studied
hypnotherapy. In London.
Okay. So is it true? This is a stupid question. Is it true when you leave a place, like if you leave Australia, do you start to adopt their accent? Is that a true thing?
Oh, for sure. I remember when I came back here, all my friends were like paying me out because I was talking with this accent, and it was kind of like a blended Aussie and Canadian accent. And I guess it wasn't going over well, but I had to kick it pretty quick. But it just kind of faded away. And then when I moved out to the UK, they were like, oh no, you sound Canadian for sure. And then every once in a while when I was talking about Australia, I could hear it come back. So it's like it's connected in there. It was in
your subconscious.
Yeah, there's a couple weird things. Like when I go to get to a car, if I'm walking to a car with someone and I'm talking about a story from Australia, I go to the wrong side of the car and I try and get in on the wrong side.
Really?
Because their cars, it's so weird. I've done it like at least 3 or 4 times.
That's interesting. Yeah. That's funny.
It's really weird.
So what was your favorite part about being in Australia? If you had to choose, I know you probably did many things, but what would you say is your fondest memory of Australia and why?
Australia is like super dear to my heart because I went out there, right after school, after high school, and I really felt like I grew up there in a sense because I was like just had a lot of development there mentally.
Right.
Because 18 to 24 is like such a crazy time of your life. You're just like going through so much and whatever. But I guess just the lifestyle there, it changed me completely. Like it's a very healthy way of living. You're by the water, you're constantly able to be outside. That really blew me away. So I guess my fondest memories would be just exploring the coast, like New South Wales coast, and Byron Bay, if anyone's familiar with, is like this little hippie town at the north end of the New South Wales coast. And it's just the most beautiful place in the world.
I want to go to Australia so bad all of a sudden. I don't know why. But.
You'd love it.
And so then when you were in Australia, you were in school, correct?
Yeah, so I went out there on a working holiday visa with a girlfriend of mine, and then she moved back home after 6 months, and I stayed, and they do this thing there where you have the option to either get a second year working holiday, but you have to do 3 months of rural farm work. It's very odd.
Bizarre.
Yeah. So I called my parents and I was like, hey, I think I'm going to go and work on this banana farm. Just letting you guys know I probably won't have cell service for 3 months. And they were like, please don't do that. Please go to school. And so I think what ended up happening was I came home for a couple weeks here, enrolled in school out there, and went back for school instead of doing the farm work.
Banana
so I
farm
went right
in. Sweet.
I know. I was down. I should have done it. It's like one of my biggest regrets, actually. But yeah, I did the 3-year bachelor's degree there shortly after. So
wow.
Yeah.
Amazing. That's super cool. And then shortly after that, you then went to London, right?
So after the degree, I had 2 more years of work there. and then they basically give you time to find a job and get sponsored. And I actually had an opportunity lined up, and I just thought, if I don't leave now, I'm never going to leave. And I hadn't seen any of Europe, and I hadn't been anywhere else. And so I was just like, okay, I'm off to London. And I kind of decided that within 6 months of my visa expiring in Australia.
Wow.
And I remember like telling a few friends, and they were like, okay, go for it. Like, good luck. And I'm like, I gotta go. So I did that. Yeah, it was another great decision. I loved it.
That's awesome. Mm-hmm. And so what would be then your fondest memory of London?
Whew.
Or, well, because you were in London then, right?
Yeah, okay. Yeah. So I lived there for 2 years, just most recently. And yeah, I guess my fondest memory of London is a crazy place. Like, going from Australia to there was just like, yeah, mind-blowing. I just met so many people from different parts of the world, and that's always been a huge part of my journey, is just like learning from everyone around me. And you definitely get to do that in London, because people are moving fast and people are doing like 3 things at once. Everyone's got a side hustle. They've got what they're studying, and then they've got a job, and it was very motivating for me. And it was the perfect place for me to get into the hypnotherapy stuff, because people just want to have conversations with you about what you're doing. There's so much like engagement and interest, and yeah, it was the most inspiring place to do that, really.
That's awesome. Yeah. And so you kind of answered it already, but what would be, since you've traveled and since you've lived in London and Australia, and you've taken in so much, and you already kind of answered it a little bit, but meeting people from all around the world, how has traveling and how has living in different parts of the world opened you up in a way of coming back home now to Winnipeg, where all your friends are, and I'm the family too as well, I would assume, right?
Yeah, some family
is all here, and seeing like their perspective, and how, you know, like they're still seeing things, or most of your friends have traveled all over the place and stuff like that, but how is, you know, with a newfound perspective or a newfound appreciation for just having that ability, what has that done for you just personally?
Yeah, I think about it sometimes, because obviously it's not for everyone. And I've had friends that just look at me and go like, I could never do what you're doing, like going away like that. But I think it gives me so much. It gives me so much in so many ways, learning from just being on my own. And I've always said I'm a really independent person, so it fuels my soul. And then when I come back, I'm better for it. I'm better for my family. I'm just like happier. I'm better to be around, because I've had these experiences, and I enjoy these experiences. I think that if my family were to, my parents got used to it so early on. I remember them being like, we cannot say anything, like she has to just go, because like we're not gonna stop this. And they've been so supportive, and they know that it makes me so happy, and they can see that this is just like who I am. So I definitely don't have to deal with any like resistance or that kind of stuff, which is great. But yeah, it's kind of hard to shift back into living around so many familiar faces, because I kind of thrive on that feeling of like being a bit of a loner in a big city and not really knowing anyone. I think that really fuels me too.
Yeah. To like go out and make connections.
Yeah, just to like know that you have no plan and you've kind of got no support. Like you're just kind of winging it.
Yeah.
I think like being thrown in the deep end to me is a lot of fun. Sink or swim.
I can relate to that.
Yeah.
I can relate that.
And I don't have that here, because there's literally so many beautiful people I could just call and they would save me from whatever it is.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's an interesting shift, but I'm really happy to be home.
I like that. That's a really interesting answer, I think, to that. And I always find it fascinating, because myself personally, I've never traveled outside of North America. So I'm like, you know, all this, I'm speaking all like on the podcast, and I'm trying to, you know, have some kind of profound perspective. But then I'm like, I've never left North America. I'm such a loser. Like, you know, and so that's something that I'm currently working on. Hopefully COVID subsides in some way, shape, or form in the next year or so. Because I know you had plans to travel again, right?
Yeah, I'm definitely still planning. I'm really curious about Berlin. So Germany was kind of next on my list. I was thinking also Japan, but it's all, of course, with COVID, it's all confusing for everyone.
I can't even imagine. And like just having some kind of plan, you know, and because your plan was pretty solidified. Like you were pretty
Yeah,
on
I've got
track to do
a
that.
couple friends there that were ready to take me in with open arms for the first week or two.
Damn.
And then, yeah, it just all fell through. I was there right before the pandemic too.
In
Just
Berlin?
checking out the city. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Like February 27th, I flew in.
Eesh.
So yeah, it was pretty crazy.
Because when does it start getting bad in Italy? Like around that time, right?
Right after, like I went to London after to visit some friends, and we were talking about Italy, and one of my Italian friends, he got an email saying he wasn't allowed to come to this yoga retreat in India. He was supposed to go on the following week because he had an Italian passport. And I remember sitting at the pub with them, and we're like, that is so bizarre. Like, you're literally locked out of India because you have an Italian passport.
Whoa.
And so it must have just been taking off in Italy then.
Yeah. Wow.
That was the beginning of March.
It
was really weird. It's so crazy to see how, like, what's happened in the last 6 months and just how much our world has changed. And
I don't believe it. Like,
anyway,
it's just hard now that, masks are mandatory and all those things. I mean, if that's like the least thing that happens, that's the least thing that happens and whatever. But just like I'm walking down the street sometimes and I'm like, we're in a pandemic. Like this is actually happening,
so crazy.
But kind of steering away because that can be a rabbit hole in and upon itself.
Same thing.
Something that we were just kind of talking about when the cameras were off was how if you were to search up hypnotherapy, it'd be like associated with people or older people who are advocating for quitting smoking. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, it just doesn't have a very attractive thing to it. I think that like a lot of people think that it's just a bunch of baloney. Like they don't think that it works, or they think that people are trying to, just it's not a reputable thing, they say. And I think that like the people that have been in it for years, like they don't really care about their brand identity. Like they're just kind of, so I don't know. It definitely doesn't have an attractive ring to it as of yet. But I think that a lot of people in the space that are like new people in the space, there's a lot of like young women that are starting to pop up as hypnotherapists, and men too. And like, they're kind of rewriting that story. So they're making it more like educating people on what it's capable of. And it's not only this like lose weight, quit smoking. Like it's like you can do a lot
that
of
just sounds like
cool
a
stuff.
get rich or get satisfied
exactly.
quick
It's like those quick fixes. It sounds too good to be true, and it's been marketed that way for a long time, I think. So I'm definitely in the running to try and sort of represent it and make it more approachable and more appealing.
Well, especially now with like more of the holistic approach to things is becoming more of a common term used, especially since like wellness, like especially now, like we were talking about with it being a pandemic and all, like wellness and people taking care of their bodies, more people are focusing on that than ever. Right? A lot of people is like thought, like as personal trainers were like, man, like nobody's going to come into the gym. Nobody wants to come into the gym. A lot of people came into the gym. A lot of people want to start getting better, but now as, things are kind of getting a little bit worse, people are leaving that space. But now, reverting to other methods of healing oneself, taking care of oneself, are becoming more prevalent in our society. And that's wonderful because, again, like you said at the start, giving power to yourself is the best thing you could possibly do for yourself and others around you. I think. And
especially during this time when we are feeling a little bit more probably helpless than usual, and just having other ways to combat that. So I definitely think that people are turning to more practices like this.
And kind of speaking on more practices similar, because one thing that when I was doing a little bit of research too as well, I kept finding like things like ayahuasca popping up too as well, and being associated with some hypnotherapist practices and everything like that. So what do you think of those methods? Not just ayahuasca as a whole, because I mean that's a whole
psychedelics,
huge, like more or less moving that, manipulating the psychology in a sense.
I think psychedelics are great. I have no personal experience with ayahuasca, but I have many friends that have, and heard good things about it. So I don't know. I can't really speak from a personal point of view, and I do know that it's like very controversial, but like, who is it that, the mushroom guy, the psilocybin guy, crap, his name.
Is it the singer?
No, he's this crazy not crazy scientist. He's really, really educated man. He talks about just the power in like medicinal mushrooms and psilocybin and magic mushrooms and stuff. And I think that's really interesting. I would love to learn more about it. I have to
He
research
wasn't the guy that
it.
was featured on Goop, was he? On Gwyneth Paltrow's like
Do you remember
Netflix?
who that was?
No.
Paul Stamets.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
just came to me.
I don't know if that was
Yeah,
him, but-
this stuff really interests me, but I haven't really gotten too deep
And
into
do you
it.
associate some of that stuff with your practice? Like, I mean, you're not, giving people mushrooms or anything like that when you're working with them, but
No,
like,
I don't know. Like, I think anything that allows you to like expand your awareness and sort of become a little bit more, I wouldn't say creative, but you're thinking in an altered state from an altered state, and that's pretty eye-opening. I think a lot of people have had really profound experiences just going in that direction. I've had profound experiences just closing my eyes and meditating and using my imagination to get
1000%.
So it depends what you want and what you're interested in, but I guess you could draw some links if you tried.
Because I just found that interesting as I was doing like a little bit of research. Those were just common things that were popping
the
up.
ayahuasca.
So kind of as we wrap up today's episode, more or less, one thing that I always ask is if there is a younger Jen, so let's call it 18-year-old Jen, just getting out of high school,
Okay.
right? Or let's say even because you said you started experiencing like some of the anxiety, and your brother had mentioned it to you when you were 19.
Yeah, it was probably a little after that, actually, probably like 2021.
Okay, so 18, 20 years
Yeah.
old Jen, walking around trying to traverse the world, figure things out, and now experiencing what you had experienced at that moment. What would be your best advice to that person right now if they were listening?
That's a good question. It's funny because I have like a really sad thing about that, but it also is kind of happy. So I guess I should share it. But I read something when I was like at my worst, like I was just at my lowest point really. And I read this, I was probably all over the internet, like, how do I fix this? What do I do? Like just searching for answers really. And I think everyone can relate to that when we're looking for answers outside ourselves and for help outside ourselves because we don't feel capable.
Yeah.
And I read some piece on anxiety and it said that you'll never cure your anxiety. You'll only learn to manage it better. And I remember thinking that is so depressing. Like that sounds awful. Like it's never going to go away. It's always going to be here. But I didn't focus on the fact that you'll learn to manage it better. And I think that wasn't enough for me at the time, but now looking back and going through my journey, that makes so much sense. And it's so true. You will learn to manage it better, and it will be almost as if it's gone because it'll be something completely different.
Yeah.
And if I didn't have those experiences, I never would have been where I am today. I never would have taken an interest in all the things that I did, and I want to say I never would have helped all the people that I've maybe helped across my path. So it's so hard when you're going through it, but when you can take a step back and look at it from a larger perspective, which hypnosis helps with that. And you just have to be able to, I guess, get that extra perspective on yourself.
And I think that's super, I love that response. And because it speaks true to who you are, and it speaks true to like the people who are of service to others, and also too, it's really interesting. I'm not going to go into detail because what you just said reminded me of a comic book that I just read, and I don't want to get into that because I'm a huge Spider-Man nerd, and I've had this comic for so long, and it's like Spider-Man and he meets God, and he's like, okay, I said I'm not getting into it, but I'm getting into it. He meets God in the comic, and Spider-Man has like a really tragic storyline. That's why he's like one of the most relatable characters in superhero genre. And so God takes him like down this like memory lane, more or less. And Spider-Man lost his uncle because of his own like selfishness. His aunt's dying now. He's lost his girlfriend. Like all these moments of suffering have happened to him. But yet where God takes him is to this beach where his aunt and uncle used to take him all the time when he was younger. And there's all these people here wearing the same clothes. They're all wearing like khaki pants and like a white tank top. Super weird. It's a really odd spectacle to look at, and especially in a comic book, because you're like, why isn't Spider-Man kicking ass right now? What is he doing?
Yeah.
But it's a really powerful lesson. It kind of alludes, and I don't want to take anything away from what you just shared with us, but what God shows Spider-Man is that all of these people wouldn't be here today if he didn't put on his super suit, if he didn't put on his mask, and if he didn't do what he did. And those moments of suffering, those moments of not knowing what to do or feeling like this is the end of the world because of what you're going through at the moment, ultimately plays to the power that you talked about that you have once you figure out that it's manageable, that the suffering, that the pain is manageable, that you can learn to work with it instead of let it affect you and destroy you. And I'm sorry that I
no,
that
that's
I, that I
so
took
on
that
point,
comment,
and it
but
also makes making connections with people easier. You know, I don't think I would have the same amount of empathy for people struggling with something similar as if I hadn't experienced it. So I think that it's super important.
I love that. So Jen, where can people find you? How can people get in contact with you? And how can people learn more about Modern Self?
Yes, so Modern Self, it's modern_self on Instagram.
Okay.
And it's modernself.online on my website. And yeah, there's some great things up there. There's a free guide to self-hypnosis, and it's like a huge PDF document with 2 different audios that you can use. So that's a great one, great resource. And then my Clear and Conscious, which is the monthly released hypnosis. And it just is all different kinds of self-improvement. So like I said, we've worked with intuition, creativity, and next month's going to be inner child healing. So I'm really excited for that. And then there's other offerings up on the website too, to work with me like one-to-one, and a couple workshops coming out too.
Awesome.
So, yeah, there's lots there.
Awesome.
So definitely head online.
Alrighty, you guys heard it there. Andrew will do something cool. He'll put all the links up, right? Yeah. Yeah. So Andrew will put all of those links in the video so you guys can see. You can also contact Jen and start working with her. If anything that we said today interests you guys, I ask that you comment and like on this episode, just so that somebody who may be struggling with something, or struggling with anxiety, or struggling with, not knowing, who to go to for help. And if they see this and this has impact and value on their lives, I ask you that you do your due diligence to share it as well. So I appreciate you guys so much for listening. And until next time, we'll see you soon. I didn't thank you for... damn it. I didn't thank you for coming on the show on the thing.
You did, no?
Shit. Can you chop it? Okay. We're still rolling?
Wait, I'm not going to be on.
Okay, well... Now, I have to know it's awkward. Just like, oh, well, thanks for coming. But
we'll just keep it.
Sure.
I'll just put all this in.
Don't do that. Okay, well, Jen, thank you so much for coming on the show. This has been a lot of fun, learning about hypnosis, learning about what you do, and also your travels and everything like that. It's always very interesting to get to know a little bit more about you. So thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
For coming on the show.
Thanks so much.
Awesome. Okay, there we go. Now we can wrap this bad boy.